Welcome to GK Show. Today we are going to do a book review. We are reviewing a book written by Amartya Sen, an Indian economist who has worked all over the world. He has written a very powerful book here, which is titled Development as Freedom. This is the book we are reviewing today. I would highlight some of the important things which have been discussed in this book by this prominent and famous economist. Amartya Sen, just a brief background about him, is an Indian economist and currently a professor at Harvard University. At the age of 9, he experienced the Bengal famine, which killed over 3 million people in 1943. Sen has worked in India, United Kingdom, that is at the London School of Economics and at Cambridge, and finally in the United States of America at Harvard University. He is a world-renowned philosopher with a tight grasp of justice. He understands social justice very well. So in our discussion today from this book, Development as Freedom, we will look at some basic concepts ranging from basic services, public finance, risk-taking and poverty, democracy, famine or starvation, public participation, and political activism. And we will try as much as possible to link what is discussed in this book with what's happening here in Kenya, because we understand Kenya better than most parts of the world. So he starts in some parts of the book. Sen says, and I quote, "There is every evidence that a country that even with relatively low income, a country that guarantees healthcare and education to all can actually achieve remarkable results in terms of the length and the quality of life of the entire population." So basically, the big economist is saying that a country which guarantees healthcare and education to all can achieve a lot in terms of the quality of life. You can see lifespan going up or improving, people living for longer and high quality life. Then he also talks about women empowerment. He's an advocate for women to be empowered, women to get more outside employment, and also to get more school education. That is maybe more years of school education instead of them dropping out of the system earlier. He talks about public finance. He says that there is more pragmatic and open-minded scrutiny of live claims of social funds. You see, when government has resources in public finance, we learn that there are competing wants. There is a want for money to be used by the military, that is the military, and also there is need for money to be spent on healthcare and education. So he understood this and wrote about it in his book, Development as Freedom. He says, and I quote, "Use of public resources for purposes where the social benefits are very far from clear, such as the massive expenditures that now go into the military in one poor country after another, oftentimes larger than the public expenditure." So what he's saying is that in most cases, the governments around the world spend more money on military as compared to what goes to direct services or basic services such as health and education. Amartya Sen further discusses ways on how poverty can drive people to take great risks. On page 146 of the book Development as Freedom, and I read one paragraph for you, he discusses the importance of democracy by giving an example. I quote, "Bordering on the Bay of Bengal, at the southern edge of Bangladesh, of West Bengal in India, there is Sundarban, which means beautiful forest. That is the natural habitat of the famous Royal Bengal tiger, a magnificent animal with grace, speed, power, and some ferocity. Relatively few of them are left now, but the surviving tigers are protected by a hunting ban. The Sundarban is also famous for the honey it produces in large clusters of natural beehives. People who live in the region, desperately poor as they are, go into the forest to collect the honey, which fetches quite a handsome price in the urban markets. Maybe even the rupee equivalent of the 50 US cents per bottle. So for every 50 cents of the US dollar, you get a bottle of honey. But the honey collectors also have to escape the tigers. In a good year, only about 50 or so honey gatherers are killed by tigers. But that number can be very much higher when things don't go well. While the tigers are protected, nothing protects the miserable human beings who try to make a living by working in those goods, which are deep and lovely and quite perilous. That is a quote of a paragraph from this book, Freedom as Development, which shows to what extent people can take risks to earn a living. For example, in this Bangladesh, in West Bengal, in India, the locals are willing to take a risk to get into the forest, which is called Sundarban, which means beautiful forest, to harvest honey from natural beehives, which is a big risk because they need to generate income for themselves and their families. These are some of the risks people take all over the world to earn some income, to survive. And it is because of poverty that people go into the forest knowing very well that they can be killed by the tigers, the Bengal tiger, which they say is fast in terms of speed, which means that you can't escape by running away. They are powerful and they are ferocious. Those are some of the risks. Here in Kenya, equally people take risks. People do even illegal business to make sure that they get some income, to put food on their table. I have seen in the past in the media and online content people collecting plastic bags and washing them in water which is polluted with raw human feces, which can even contaminate them with dangerous diseases such as diarrhea, typhoid, dysentery, and many other diseases, in the name of looking for money to make some income. So Amartya Sen really discusses very pertinent issues which are not unique to India, but they are also happening all over the world. Elsewhere, Sen discusses about famine. Famine is a condition whereby people die out of lack of food or through starvation. And it says in the book on page 52, Sen has something to say about famine. And he says that no substantial famine has ever occurred in any independent country with a democratic form of government and a relatively free press. So there are two things if we really want to escape famine, according to Amartya Sen, the great economist. One, there should be a free press. Two, there should be a democratic government. He argues that when there is democracy, people cannot suffer from hunger, from famine, because In a democratic government, the governments are very responsive. They have to respond faster with programs which can bring or which can make sure that the famine does not affect the country. Because they know in a country where there is multi-party democracy, where there are regular elections, where there is opposition parties which raise issues, they can be thrown out of power if they don't respond faster enough. He even gives an example of India, which faced a famine in 1943. That was the last and the biggest famine, which killed over 3 million people. But that was the last one. He even compares that to China, which is not a democratic country, which is authoritarian, autocratic government, where people are not regularly elected, the leaders in government. So he says that in China, between 1958 and 1961, over 30 million Chinese died under the big program which was called the Great Leap. They found out that the public policy of that Great Leap Forward was not working, but they insisted on going on trying around with it. So they ended up killing over 30 million people through famine. The famines of those times between 1958 and 1961 was really very bad. Finally, Amartya Sen also emphasizes the importance of public participation in policy making. He says, and I quote, that political and civil rights, especially those related to the guaranteeing of open discussion, debate, criticism, and dissent, are central to the process of generating informed and reflected choices. So it really says that the government or a democratic government should allow people to participate or to enjoy their political and civil rights, especially in participating in debates, in discussions, in criticism, and in dissent. Dissent means being or coming up with different ideas from those of government. He says that it's only through debate that we can test the wisdom of public policies. Otherwise, it will not be possible. He also emphasizes that there should be political activism. And he says that the activism of opposition parties is an important force in non-democratic societies as well as democratic ones. So in every democratic country, we should have opposition, strong opposition parties. These strong opposition parties are the ones to voice the concerns of the people. When people are saying or are dissatisfied with government or public policy, it is the opposition activism which can help the countries come up with sober solutions, with wiser public policy, which can lead to a better life. Up to that point, we have examined and reviewed the book Development as Freedom by the famous economist, Indian economist Amartya Sen. Thank you very much. We will keep reviewing more books as we read them. Thank you. See you next time on the internet. And before you leave, kindly subscribe on the subscription button below. Thank you.